The emergency room hummed with its usual Friday night chaos, a symphony of beeping monitors, hurried footsteps, and worried voices that Dr. Everly Gould had learned to tune out over her 3 years of residency. She moved through the controlled chaos with practiced efficiency, her dark hair pulled back in a messy bun, her white coat bearing the faint stains of a 12-hour shift that showed no signs of ending. Dr. Gould. Trauma in Bay 3, a nurse called out. Everly nodded, grabbing a fresh pair of gloves as she pushed through the curtain. But it wasn't the patient that made her freeze, it was the man standing beside the gurney, his expensive suit jacket draped over the elderly woman lying there, his hand gently holding hers. Aiden Barrett. The name alone sent her heart into an irregular rhythm that no amount of medical training could explain. 6 months had passed since that night, the night that was supposed to be forgettable, meaningless. Just as strangers seeking comfort in a city that made loneliness feel like a chronic condition. His eyes met hers, and she watched recognition dawn across his features. Those same gray eyes that had looked at her with such intensity, such unexpected tenderness, now widened with surprise. Everly. His voice was exactly as she remembered, smooth, warm, with that slight rasp that had whispered her name in the darkness. Mr. Barrett. She forced herself into professional mode, turning her attention to the patient. What happened? She's my housekeeper, Rosa. She fell down the stairs. I think she might have broken her hip. His concern was genuine. His hand still protectively wrapped around the older woman's, Everly began her examination, aware of his presence in a way that made her fingers slightly unsteady. Rosa was conscious, but in pain, and as Everly worked, she could feel Aiden's gaze on her, heavy with unspoken questions. We'll need to take her for x-rays, Everly said, signaling for an orderly. You can wait in the family area. I'm not leaving her. There was no argument in his tone, just quiet determination. As they wheeled Rosa away, Everly felt his hand catch her elbow gently. Can we talk? I'm working. After your shift then. That's not a good idea, Everly. Please. Something in his voice made her pause. Vulnerability she hadn't expected from the confident businessman. She'd met at that hotel bar 6 months ago, fine, but only for a few minutes. She pulled away, needing the distance, needing to breathe. The rest of her shift dragged on with agonizing slowness. Rose's hip was indeed fractured, requiring surgery that would be scheduled for the next day. Aiden remained at the hospital, making calls, ranging for the best orthopedic surgeon, ensuring Rose's family was notified and transported to the hospital. Everly watched from a distance, seeing a side of him she hadn't glimpsed that night, protective, caring, willing to move mountains for someone who worked for him. When her shift finally ended at 2 in the morning, she found him in the waiting room, tie loosened, the first 2 buttons of his shirt undone, exhaustion etched into his handsome features. You didn't have to wait, she said quietly. Yes, I did. He stood, and suddenly the space between them felt charged with everything unsaid. There's a coffee shop down the street that's open all night. Hospital coffee doesn't count as actual coffee. Despite herself, she smiled. Lead the way. The November air was crisp as they walked in silence, the city around them settling into its late-night rhythm. The coffee shop was nearly empty, just a few night owls hunched over laptops. They ordered black coffee for him, a latte for her, and found a corner booth. So Aiden began, wrapping his hands around his cup. Doctor, I didn't know. You never asked. Everly met his eyes. We didn't do much talking. A faint smile crossed his lips. No, we didn't, but I thought about you. More than I should have. Her heart stumbled. Aiden, I tried to find you. I went back to that hotel bar 3 times, hoping you'd be there. I even asked the bartender if he'd seen you. He leaned forward. Do you know how crazy you made me? One night, and I couldn't get you out of my head. Everly felt her carefully constructed walls beginning to crack. It was supposed to be just one night. No names, no numbers, no complications. That was the agreement. I never agreed to that. His voice was soft but intense. You decided that, and then you disappeared, because that's what it was meant to be. She stared into her latte, watching the foam swirl. I was having the worst day of my life. I just lost a patient, a little girl, only 7 years old. I did everything right, but it wasn't enough. I went to that bar to forget, to feel something other than the weight of her mother's screams. Aiden reached across the table, his fingers brushing hers. I'm sorry, don't be. You gave me exactly what I needed that night. You made me feel alive when I felt dead inside. But it was never supposed to be more than that, and what if I wanted to be more? The question hung between them like a challenge, like a promise. Like a threat to the carefully ordered life she'd built around her demanding career. You don't know me, she said, pulling her hand back. Then let me. His eyes held hers with an intensity that made it hard to breathe. Let me take you to dinner. Let me learn your favorite color, what makes you laugh, why you became a doctor. This is a bad idea? Probably. He smiled, and it transformed his face from handsome to devastating. But when has that ever stopped anyone? Against every logical thought screaming in her head, Everly found herself nodding. One dinner! That's all. One dinner, he agreed. But the satisfaction in his eyes suggested he was planning for much more. They exchanged numbers this time. And as Everly walked to her car, she couldn't shake the feeling that she'd just stepped off a cliff. Unsure if she'd fly or fall out. The dinner happened 3 days later at an Italian restaurant tucked away in the financial district. Aiden was waiting outside when she arrived, and the smile that lit his face when he saw her made her stomach flip. You came, he said, as if he doubted she would. I almost didn't. Honesty felt important somehow. What changed your mind? Curiosity. She allowed him to hold the door open. And maybe the fact that I haven't been able to stop thinking about you either. The admission seemed to please him immensely. The restaurant was intimate, candlelit, with soft Italian music playing in the background. They ordered wine, pasta, and began the careful dance of learning each other. Tell me about Rosa, Everly said. You clearly care about her very much. Aiden's expression softened. She's been with my family since I was 10. When my mother died, Rosa was the one who held our household together. She taught me to cook, listened to my teenage angst, and called me out when I was being an entitled brat, which was often. I'm sorry about your mother, Cancer. It was brutal and fast. He took a sip of wine. My father threw himself into work, which left Rosa to essentially raise me and my younger sister. She's family, not staff. The idea of her being in pain, alone. He shook his head. I couldn't bear it. Everly felt something shift in her chest, a tenderness toward this man who clearly valued loyalty and love over status and wealth. What about you? He asked. What made you want to be a doctor? My brother. The words came easier than expected. He had leukemia when I was 12. I watched him fight for 3 years, watched the doctors work miracles and also make mistakes. He survived, and I decided I wanted to be the person who gave families hope. That's beautiful. It's exhausting, she admitted. Some days, I wonder if I made the right choice. The hours are crushing, the emotional toll is immense, and no matter how hard you try, you can't save everyone, but you save some. Aiden's hand found hers across the table. And that matters more than you know. They talked for hours, long after their plates were cleared and the restaurant began to empty. Everly learned that Aiden ran a venture capital firm, that he loved jazz music and old movies, that he'd wanted to be an architect, but his father had steered him toward business. Aiden learned that Everly was terrible at cooking, that she'd rather read than watch television, that her favorite color was the blue of the ocean at dawn. When they finally left, the city was quiet, the streets nearly empty. Aiden walked her to her car, his hand finding the small of her back in a gesture that felt both protective and intimate. Can I see you again? He asked. Yes, no hesitation this time. He smiled, then leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away. But she didn't. His lips met hers in a kiss that was gentle and searching, a stark contrast to the urgent passion of that first night. This kiss spoke of possibility, of beginnings rather than endings. When they parted, Everly felt dizzy. Good night, Aiden. Good night, Everly. He opened her car door. Drive safe. As she drove home, she couldn't stop smiling, couldn't quiet the hope blooming dangerously in her chest. The next few weeks unfolded like a dream. Despite their demanding schedules, They found time for each other: early morning coffee before her shifts, late dinners after his meetings. Stolen moments that felt precious precisely because they were rare. Aiden showed up at the hospital with lunch on particularly brutal days. Everly learned to read his moods, knew when work stress was weighing on him, and would send funny memes or encouraging texts. They fit together in unexpected ways, their differences complementing rather than conflicting, but it was during a Saturday afternoon, nearly a month after their reunion, that everything changed. Everly had been invited to Aiden's penthouse apartment for the first time. The space was stunning floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, minimalist decor that somehow felt warm rather than cold, and a state-of-the-art kitchen where Rosa was apparently teaching him to make authentic Italian meatballs. "She's recovering well," Aiden said as he poured wine. "The surgery was successful, and she's already bossing around her physical therapists. That's wonderful." Everly settled onto his impossibly comfortable couch. Looking out at the city sprawl below, he joined her, close enough that their thighs touched. "I'm glad you're here, me too." They were quiet for a moment, comfortable in the silence, when Aiden spoke again. "Everly, I need to tell you something." The seriousness in his tone made her heart rate quicken. "Okay, that night we met I wasn't completely honest with you." She turned to face him fully. "What do you mean?" "I was engaged." The words landed like stones between them. Her name was Victoria. We'd been together for 4 years, and everyone expected us to get married. But I wasn't happy. I hadn't been for a long time. Everly felt cold. "You cheated on her with me." "No." He caught her hand when she tried to pull away. "I broke it off with her that morning." The engagement was over, but I hadn't told anyone yet. "I went to that bar because I didn't want to be alone with the knowledge that I just destroyed what everyone thought was a perfect relationship." "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because I'm falling in love with you." His voice was raw with emotion. "And I needed you to know that you weren't a mistake or a rebound. You were the reason I found the courage to end something that was wrong. Seeing you, talking to you that night, it showed me what I'd been missing. What real connection felt like." Everly's breath caught. "Aiden, you don't have to say it back. I just needed you to know." He brought her hand to his lips. "That night changed everything for me." "You changed everything." She should have been angry about the deception, about the engagement he'd failed to mention. But looking into his eyes, seeing the vulnerability there, she understood. Sometimes people need to make a choice before they can fully leave something behind. "I'm falling for you too," she whispered. "It terrifies me. But I am." His kiss was her answer, deep and claiming. And when he lifted her into his arms and carried her to his bedroom, it felt like a promise being made without words. But promises, Everly would learn, were complicated things. The first crack appeared 2 weeks later when she arrived at Aiden's office to surprise him for lunch. His assistant, a polished woman named Margaret, gave her an uncomfortable look. "Dr. Gould, I'm not sure this is a good time." "Why not?" Before Margaret could answer, a woman emerged from Aiden's office stall, blonde, beautiful in that effortless way that spoke of old money and good breeding. She stopped when she saw Everly, her eyes assessing and cold. "You must be the doctor," she said, her smile not reaching her eyes. "I'm Victoria, the ex-fiancée." Everly felt her stomach drop. "Victoria." Aiden appeared in the doorway, his expression carefully neutral. "I wasn't expecting you." Clearly, Victoria's gaze flicked between them. "I just wanted to return some of your things." "I won't keep you." She brushed past Everly, pausing just long enough to whisper, "Be careful." Aiden has a habit of chasing what he can't have until he catches it. Then he gets bored. The words burrowed under Everly's skin like splinters. "Don't listen to her," Aiden said once Victoria left, pulling Everly into his office. "She's bitter about the breakup." "Is what she said true?" Everly asked. "Do you chase and then lose interest?" "No." He cupped her face in his hands. "What I feel for you is nothing like what I had with Victoria. This is real, Everly. Please believe me." She wanted to. But doubt, once planted, was hard to uproot. The doubt grew as Aiden's behavior began to shift. He became increasingly protective, showing up at the hospital unannounced, questioning her about her colleagues, particularly Dr. Marcus Chen, the attending physician she worked closely with. "He seems interested in you," Aiden said one evening. His tone casual but his eyes watchful. "He's married with 3 kids, Everly replied, confused. "He's my mentor, nothing more. I just don't like the way he looks at you." "Aiden, you're being ridiculous, am I?" He stepped closer. "You're brilliant and beautiful. Every man who sees you wants you." "That's not true, and even if it were, it wouldn't matter. I chose you, but the possessiveness didn't stop. It intensified." Aiden started calling multiple times during her shifts, showing up at her apartment without warning, suggesting she switch to a different hospital where he knew the chief of staff, somewhere he could ensure she was safe. Safe from what? Everly demanded after he'd shown up at her apartment at midnight because she hadn't answered her phone. She'd been in surgery. "From anything that could hurt you." His hands gripped her shoulders. "I can't lose you, Everly." "I won't. You're scaring me." The admission hung in the air between them. Aiden's expression crumbled. "I'm sorry. I know I'm being irrational. It's just when I found you again, after spending months thinking I'd never see you, it felt like fate. Like you were meant to be mine. The thought of anything taking you away. Nobody owns me." Aiden. She stepped back. "I care about you, but this isn't healthy. You need to trust me." "I do trust you." "No, you don't. You're suffocating me." He looked stricken. "Tell me how to fix this. Give me space. Let me breathe. Stop showing up everywhere like you're monitoring me, okay?" He nodded slowly. "You're right. I'll do better." And for a while, he did. The calls decreased, the surprise visits stopped, and Everly felt like she could breathe again. But she couldn't shake the memory of that intensity in his eyes. The way his love had felt less like an embrace and more like a cage closing around her. The breaking point came on a Tuesday night when Everly was having dinner with her college friend, Nathan. They'd been close for years, purely platonic. But Nathan had recently moved back to the city, and they were catching up on lost time. They were laughing over shared memories. Nathan's hand briefly touching her arm as he made a point. When Everly looked up and saw Aiden standing across the restaurant, his face twisted with something dark and wounded, her heart sank. "Aiden, what are you doing here?" "I could ask you the same thing." His voice was cold. "Who is this?" "I'm Nathan." Her friend stood, extending a hand that Aiden ignored. "I'm an old friend of Everly's, an old friend who can't keep his hands to himself." "Aiden, stop." Everly stood, mortification flooding through her. "You're making a scene, am I?" He laughed bitterly. "You tell me you need space, and then I find you here with another man because I'm allowed to have friends." Her voice rose. "I'm allowed to have a life outside of you. Not when it disrespects what we have. We don't have anything if you don't trust me." Tears burned in her eyes. "This is exactly what I was afraid of. You say you love me, but what you really want is to control me. That's not fair, isn't it? You track my location, you question everyone I interact with, you show up everywhere I go. That's not love, Aiden. That's obsession." The word landed like a blow. Aiden's face went pale, and, for a moment, she saw hurt so deep it made her chest ache. But then his expression shuddered, became the cold mask of the businessman she'd first met. "If that's what you think of me, then maybe we're done." He turned and walked out, leaving Everly standing there, trembling with anger and heartbreak and relief all tangled together. Nathan touched her shoulder gently. "Are you okay?" No, she sank back into her chair. "But I will be." The weeks that followed were brutal. Everly threw herself into work, taking every shift she could, using exhaustion as a shield against the pain. Aiden didn't call or text, and she told herself it was for the best. What they'd had was unsustainable, destined to either burn out or burn them both. But at night, alone in her apartment, she missed him with an intensity that surprised her. Not the possessive, overwhelming version of him, but the man who'd held her after she'd had a bad day, who'd made her laugh until her sides hurt, who'd looked at her like she was the most precious thing in his world. She wondered if he missed her too. Or if Victoria had been right, maybe Aiden had caught what he was chasing. And now he'd moved on. Her answer came on a Saturday morning when Margaret, Aiden's assistant, called. Dr. Gould, I'm sorry to bother you, but I need your help. What's wrong? It's Aiden. He's not well. He's locked himself in his apartment, won't answer his phone, and Rosa is worried sick. I know things ended badly between you, but I'll be right there. Everly grabbed her medical bag and drove to Aiden's building with her heart in her throat. Rosa met her at the door, eyes red from crying. Thank you for coming. He won't let anyone in, but maybe you. Everly knocked on the apartment door. Aiden, it's me. Let me in. Silence. Aiden, I know you're angry, and you have every right to be. But Rosa is scared, and I'm scared. Please just let me see that you're okay. More silence, and then the sound of locks turning. The door opened to reveal Aiden looking hollow-eyed and unshaven, thinner than he'd been just weeks ago. Everly. Her name was a broken whisper. Can I come in? He stepped aside, and she entered the apartment that had once felt warm but now seemed cold despite the expensive furnishings. The curtains were drawn, dishes piled in the sink, and the air held the stale quality of a space cut off from the world. When's the last time you ate? She asked gently. I don't know. Yesterday? The day before? She guided him to the couch, the same couch where they'd shared wine and dreams. I'm going to check your vitals, okay? He let her examine him with the detached compliance of someone who'd stopped caring. His blood pressure was low, his pulse weak, and she could see he'd lost significant weight. You need to eat something, she said, moving to the kitchen. She found bread and made toast, poured orange juice, brought it to him like an offering. He took a bite mechanically, and she sat beside him, waiting. I'm sorry, he finally said, for everything. You were right, I was obsessed. I knew I was losing you, and instead of giving you the space you needed, I held tighter. I drove you away. Aiden, let me finish. He set down the toast, his hands shaking slightly. After you left, I started seeing a therapist. She helped me understand that the way I was acting wasn't love, it was fear. Fear of abandonment, fear of loss. I've been working on it, trying to understand why I am the way I am. Everly felt tears prick her eyes. That must have been hard. It was necessary. Because I realized something important. If I truly love you, I need to let you be free. Even if that freedom means losing you. The words were so raw, so honest, that Everly felt her careful defenses crumbling. Do you want to lose me? God, no, his eyes met hers, and the vulnerability there was staggering. I want you in my life in whatever way you'll have me. Even if that's just as friends, even if it means watching you be happy with someone else. Your happiness matters more to me than my own feelings. This was different from before. No demands, no possession, just honest love offered without expectation. It was what she'd needed all along. I don't want to be with someone else, she said quietly. I want to be with you. But I need you to understand that loving someone means trusting them. It means letting them have space and friends and a life outside the relationship. I know that now. I'm learning it. He reached for her hand tentatively, and when she didn't pull away, his fingers intertwined with hers. Can we start over? Slowly this time. Doing it right? We can't start over. But maybe we can start fresh, with everything we've learned. She squeezed his hand. I'm willing to try if you are. I'm willing to do whatever it takes. They sat together in the quiet apartment. And Everly felt something settle in her chest, not the wild euphoria of new love, but something deeper, more sustainable. Hope tempered with wisdom, passion balanced with caution. The months that followed were a study in patience and growth. Aiden continued with therapy, and Everly joined him for couples counseling. They learned to communicate their fears instead of acting on them, to trust instead of control, to love without consuming. There were setbacks. Moments when Aiden's old patterns resurfaced, and Everly had to gently, but firmly remind him of their boundaries. Times when Everly's walls went up and Aiden had to practice the art of patient waiting. But slowly, painfully, beautifully, they built something real. Aiden threw himself into making amends not just with Everly, but with everyone his possessiveness had affected. He apologized to Nathan, to Everly's colleagues, to Rosa for worrying her. He learned to celebrate Everly's independence rather than fear it. Everly, for her part, learned to let someone in fully, to trust that loving someone didn't mean losing herself. She introduced Aiden to her brother, who was now in remission and thriving. She brought him to hospital events, proud to have him by her side not as an accessory, but as a partner. They found their rhythm dates when their schedules aligned. Quiet nights in when they both needed rest, and constant small gestures that said, "I'm thinking of you," without the weight of expectation. 8 months after their reconciliation, Everly was finishing a particularly difficult shift when she found Aiden waiting in the hospital lobby with takeout from her favorite Thai restaurant. "Rough day?" he asked, taking in her exhausted expression. "Lost a patient. An older man who reminded me of my grandfather." She accepted the food gratefully. "How did you know to come?" Rosa mentioned, "It's the anniversary of the day you lost that little girl, the one that sent you to the bar where we met. I figured you might need a friend." The thoughtfulness of it, the way he'd remembered and cared without being told, made her throat tight with emotion. "Thank you." They ate in his car parked outside the hospital, watching the city lights flicker to life as the sun set. "Do you ever regret it?" Aiden asked quietly. "That night meeting me, everything that followed?" Everly considered the question seriously. "No, even the painful parts taught me things I needed to learn. And this," she gestured between them, "what we have now is worth every difficult moment it took to get here. I love you." He said it simply, without the desperate intensity of before. "Not because I need to possess you, but because you make my life better by being in it. Because you challenge me to be better. Because you're brilliant and compassionate and brave. I love you too." She leaned over and kissed him softly. "All of you, the good, the complicated, the still figuring it out parts. Where do we go from here?" he asked. "Forward." She smiled. "Together but separate. Intertwined but not consumed. One day at a time." "I can work with that." As they drove through the city that had brought them together, Everly thought about the strange journey from that one desperate night to this moment of hard one. Peace. She thought about how sometimes love needed to fall apart before it could be rebuilt into something stronger. How the space between obsession and devotion was where real love lived. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be more challenges, more moments of doubt and fear. But they'd face them as partners who'd learned that true love wasn't about holding on so tight you suffocated, but about loving someone enough to let them breathe, trusting they'd choose to stay. And in that trust, Everly had found something more valuable than the fleeting escape of one night. She'd found the possibility of a lifetime, built on honesty, respect, and the kind of love that made both of them better than they were alone. It wasn't the fairy tale she'd once imagined, but it was real, messy, and beautifully human. And that, she realized, was exactly what she needed. Epilogue. A year later, Everly stood in front of the mirror in a simple white dress, adjusting the flowers in her hair. The ceremony would be small, just close friends and family held in Rosa's garden, because the woman who'd witnessed their journey deserved to see its culmination. There had been no grand proposal, no fireworks or public displays, just a quiet evening on Aiden's couch, both exhausted from their respective days, when he turned to her and said, "I want to spend my life with you. Not because I can't live without you, but because I choose to live with you. What do you say?" And she'd said yes, because she learned that choosing someone every day was more powerful than needing them. As she walked down the makeshift aisle between rows of chairs, she saw Aiden waiting, his eyes bright with unshed tears. Nathan stood as one of her groomsmen, and Victoria was notably absent. She'd moved to Europe and, according to Margaret, had found happiness with someone new. When Aiden took her hands, his grip was firm but not possessive, loving but not consuming. "Ready?" he whispered. "Always," she replied, and as they spoke their vows under the summer sky, promising not forever but choosing today and every day after, Everly understood that their story wasn't about one night or even a lifetime. It was about the space in between, the daily choice to love well, to trust fully, and to build something real from the ruins of what could have been. It was about learning that the most profound connections weren't the ones that consumed you, but the ones that freed you to become who you were always meant to be. And in Aiden's eyes, Everly saw her reflection not diminished or controlled, but whole, worthy, and wonderfully, perfectly loved.